everybody. Welcome to episode 63 for the second time today. We had a small technical detail issue, so we've reset and we're right back with it. So if you're not aware, this is the LiveCast Conversation With, and as always, I'm your host, Gene Bernier. Today on the show, we have Neil Shapiro, or as I lovingly call him, Dr. Data. Neil has spent over 25 years in the corporate sector, working at a number of Fortune 500 organizations in various industries such as travel, consumer products, media, and medical. He landed in the digital space by accident when he got into the travel industry. Imagine being the only digital marketing analyst for a company of 500, and in the end, managing a multi-million-dollar online operation. He spent from 2011 to 2009 sharpening his skills as a digital marketing practitioner in an effort to land the job with another corporation. During this period, he started a side gig as a digital analytics specialist under the banner lowcostanalytics.com with the intention of keeping his skills relevant for said job. Then 2020 came along and changed everything. Neil chose to follow his heart and launch Zen Digital Analytics, and now works for multiple seven-figure clients to gather, verify, analyze, and use their data to truly move their organizations forward. Neil, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Gene. This is cool. I was looking forward to this all week.
Likewise, my friend. Likewise. So obviously, my words cannot do you and your journey justice. Where do we start? Why don't we start at like the job and go from there to where you are now?
Well, we call it old social conditioning and going through and getting my master's and kind of bouncing in and out of companies and always being, let's call it, undervalued. And back in, it was 2016, quote, I landed the job thinking this was going to be it, do another 15 years and be able to walk away. And in the end, it didn't work out. A lot of it didn't align with my own, inner beliefs. The organization was kind of toxic in a way. And at the end, they really did me a favor. So you learn over time. The best advice I tell people is when you start chasing, it usually never works out. And so fast forward in 2019, as I was building this out, there was a level of frustration because I didn't understand what my ideal client looked like. And I'd go on calls, and a lot of times I didn't understand the right questions to ask clients, because a lot of times they didn't even know what they wanted. So here I am. I decided to get uncomfortable, and I took a job with a medical company, doing something a little bit different. But the vice president of marketing is like, "Hey, you got the analytics chops. We need to talk." And unfortunately, I thought it was going to evolve into something else. And February of 2020. My contract ended. So here I am, February of 2020, contract ends. All right, okay, you know what? I'm going to keep looking with this intention. I want to leave New York. I want to go to Nevada. It's kind of a funny story of how, the universe kind of aligns up. March 13th, I have an interview with a company out here, and I get off the call, and I said to myself, something was wrong with this call. And reflecting on it, it was the fact that this vice president had more than enough time to review my resume, to be prepared. I've always over-prepared for these kind of conversations. And he says to me, I'm still looking at your resume, and I'm going, you know what? I can't work for somebody like this, because I call it respect. And I felt a little ounce of disrespect. Like, if I invested my time to ask the questions and he's still reviewing my resume, I was like, this doesn't work. Ironically, that was the day the pandemic really hit. And I still think about, I literally had hung up the phone, and my phone's ringing. It's my mom. I'm like, hi. And she's like, hi. And I'm like, and she says to me, what's wrong? I said, I just literally hung up the phone from the interview with the company out in Vegas. She's like, "Oh, how did it go?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know." And then she says to me, "Oh, by the way, your dad's in the hospital. He's having a pacemaker put in." I'm going, killjoy of a day. So here I am, and I have a conversation with somebody else really, really close to me, and she says to me, "Neil, what do you want to do?" And at that point, it was the clarity hit. I was like, you know what? I am all in on me. I am done chasing this, going through the hoops of trying to find an organization that aligns, and then having to go through a whole interview process where usually it's not even the person you're working for that's the guardian at the gate. It's usually the HR person. So at that point, I went in all in. It took a while for me to peel back some layers in terms of understanding my worth of the business. I had a couple of people say to me, "You're the freaking expert. Why are you charging so little?" And that was an old mindset of mine of getting my foot in the door. And once I got over that block and understanding I have to make the ask. If I don't ask, I'm never going to know. And slowly but surely, my rates started going up. The clients, I was asking the right questions, because a lot of times they don't know what they want, or there's situations where they put a proposal out that's vague, and I have to go deep to figure out, okay, what do you need? What do you honestly need? Or one of my questions, what is your biggest pain point? How do I get you to the next level? I need to understand that. So it's really been an interesting journey, but especially this year, moving, I was really on a very high trajectory before I get the phone call. There's a house here. We got to do this now. And last month, I turned everything back on in September. September was a little slow. October was my highest revenue producing month for the year.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's quite the journey over that period of time. There's a lot to unpack and things to jump into.
Sure.
I want to kind of take a little bit back. You talked about cultural, what do you call it? Cultural constraints or mindset around the job and how that affected you. It kind of almost felt like you tied it around like not knowing where you wanted to be and still having to fulfill the idea of having a job.
It's a good question, Gene. For me, in this business in digital, what I've learned over time and dealing with large companies now is you got to be yourself. You got to be able not be afraid to ask questions when you don't know, because it's easier to say I don't know versus I've seen people, I say to meetings and it's a song and a dance, and I'm like, still haven't answered my question. So culture to me, one is being open and transparent, and also being able to communicate with people without, I call them restrictive barriers. Well, he's a vice president. Like, I need an answer. He's the one that has the answer. And, the politicking alone, to me, was getting very frustrating. And in a lot of ways, in my last corporate role, my job description was, it was an overdeveloped description working with a underdeveloped leader. And it created a little bit of friction because I bring energy. I show up on time. I don't like calling in sick. And to him, there were days where we didn't communicate. And I know it had nothing to do with me, but I found out in the end afterwards, he was afraid of me. And I'm like, I came here to do a job. Why would you be afraid of me? My intention is not to steal your job. You've been doing this longer than I've been doing it. And at the end of the day, when I look at leadership now, is part of a leadership role is you're there to success, set your people up for success. He was not setting me up for success. He was kind of like giving me a ton of autonomy. But on the other hand, he wasn't passing the knowledge I really needed, because there was a conversation one afternoon where I called him out and he just got totally flustered. And I kind of knew then that this was not going to end well for me.
Right. So it's a little bit about that is, I guess, hearing that is like that kind of crafts into the types of people that you want to work with as your own business owner now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so going from that place of being hunting for the job, because was like a sense of security. Like a lot of people, like don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with being an employee and having the job. Like, all the power to you. Not everybody's in that ability to strike out on their own.
Sure.
And they're like, so whatever you take from this conversation is, for the listeners, is like, I support you. There needs to be employees. It can't all be just entrepreneurs. And you can also take something from those and still be an entrepreneur within those jobs and be like, hey, here's the type of leader I work best with. Here's the situations that I can thrive in. How can I bring value? And what we're hearing from Neil is like, there's always an opportunity. Just because you got the title doesn't necessarily mean you've got all the answers. In fact, if you've got a team, you should have the fewest answers and have the greatest questions.
Yeah. It was, the other thing that I've learned over time is, as much as I quote had the job, it's like, what did it teach me in the end? It taught me what I didn't want. And that's something I tell people is, what, does it align with you and what you really want to do? Yeah. I had some friends, they've been with the same organization for 20 years. They're still happy because they love what they do. But I've known people who have bounced around and it's like, yeah, this organization's crap. I came in there, I did this, and this. They didn't appreciate me. Or, oh, I know, here's the classic one. I've added so much value, but, I'm only getting a 3% raise. And I said to them, you're lucky you get anything. There's nothing written unless you have a contract that says they're entitled to give you a fair increase. And it's just a net effect of the system that you work under.
100%. And at the end of the day, it comes down to, what are you asking for too, right? Like, did you ask for it? Did you lobby for it? I had a question. I totally just slipped about. So through all this, what I'm hearing is like, there was opportunities for you to start to ask what it is that you wanted. Like, is there a clear point between the 2019 to now where you're like, oh my Lord, I finally just asked for what it is that I want. I wasn't afraid to ask. Is there a moment that jumps out for you around that, Neil?
Is there a moment? I feel the moment really came when I really sat down and I asked myself, and I had the picture somewhere, the whiteboard got erased. What does my ideal client look like? And once I understood that, then everything started to align. I was able to also understanding the ideal client helped me form the right questions to ask when I have those initial conversations, because I felt that was part of the gap. Like, I had a couple of people that didn't onboard with me, but at the end of the day, they were vague. And once I started asking the questions, in some cases, what they asked and what they wanted were two opposite ends of the spectrum. And I was very honest. I said, I give them an honest opinion, but I said, this doesn't align with what I do. I know I'm not the right fit. And when it really started to crystallize was, I worked with a company actually based out of Europe, very large organization. And it's kind of a couple hours consulting when they need me on the Google Analytics side. But once I asked the question, they were really specific on what they were looking for. And then when we sat down, it was a fantastic conversation. And before, there was no hesitation. Neil, we're sending you the offer. And it was actually, it's the highest contract I have right now, billable. But again, it's infrequent, but you know what it is? They're a pleasure to work with. They always appreciate the effort I give them. And what's funny about it was when I started, oh, you got to meet our CEO. So I finally get to meet him, and it's him and the whole marketing team. And him and I are having this one-to-one, what happens before he pops on. Everybody's real casual. He pops in on Zoom. It got serious. We start talking, and then all of a sudden he changed the tone. It was like, okay, it's go time. And I only heard, he goes, Neil, this guy really likes you. But again, it's also about being able to relate to the people too. And what, I always tell people, the other thing that I learned over time is if the person doesn't make the effort to get to know you as a person, even for 2 minutes, it doesn't work out. Where are you from? Just basic questions. I had a couple of interviews like that, with actually jobs here way before this, and these guys were like unprofessional and rude. And the irony is, one of these companies reached out to me right before I moved, and I was kind of like, I'm going to let the HR person know the God's honest truth, because it was a job I already applied for. And I said, look, said, I'm not exactly interested in the role just based on 2 past experiences with some people in your organization. And she's like, why? I said, to be honest with you, they didn't take 2 minutes to get me to know me as a person. And the level of questioning, and when I asked them a very open-ended professional question, it was, I could tell that the prior person was not set up to be successful. And she's like, thank you. Thanks for letting me know. But again, at the end of the day, it all kind of convalesces around experiences and, going, okay, what are the red flags?
Yeah. And, the counter to that is like, you're starting to understand what are your green flags as well, right? Like that's just, a lot of people talk about like, where are the red flags in this? Be like, what are the green ones, right? Like, if we're just looking for red, like, we'll find them. Trust me, they're everywhere. Anybody who's like out there hunting for clients, you'll find them. They'll be in everyone. They'll be in every single relationship that you have, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what I'm hearing from this is, over this time, like, what made this a great client is you start to understand what your green flags are for a great client. And like you mentioned that, this happens sporadically. Be like, but I bet it happens sporadically as you learn your green flags. I'll bet you $5 right now over the course of the next year that you will find more great clients, because you understand what it is that the value. Not only do you just understand what your clients, ideal clients is, but you also understand where you bring the utmost value. I've heard you mention a few times here already on this call is that you've said no to things because they weren't the right fit, because they weren't going to allow you to do what you do at your best.
Yeah, no, I've had a few clients. I had one who I really went the extra mile with, and I kept explaining to him, this is how it works in Google Data Studio. This is as best as it's going to get. I cannot round peg, square hole. I don't hear anything for about 5 days. All of a sudden, he's messaging me and attacking me. And he said, you know what, Frank? I tell you what. I said, first of all, I don't appreciate this. I said, I've done multiple videos explaining things to you. This is as best as it's going to get. I can't make something. It just is not meant to do this. I can't make something work if it's not, the functionality isn't present. And he's threatening me. And I said, you know what, Frank? Here's your money. Never contact me again. To find out months later, the company reached out to me. I thought it was him, because I'm like, oh no. I said, oh no. And the woman was like, can we borrow an hour of your time? I'm like, well, it's going to cost you. And I charged the highest premium I ever charged. And she apologizes profusely for Frank. And she's like, he's no longer with the organization. And I tried to help her. I really did. And I don't know what he did. I couldn't figure it out. I'm not a developer. And she claims she knew all this stuff. And I honestly, I don't know if she did, but it was like, these are people I won't work with. I had another potential. I'm in the chat with I guess the person who's calling the shots. He brings in the project manager. And all of a sudden, he starts adding to the requirements, and I'm going, oh no. And he's like, and it's stuff that I don't do.
Yeah.
And he keeps asking, and I'm like, to be blunt, I'm like, I cannot take this job on. I said, I don't do this. He's like, why can't we talk? And I'm explaining to him, I don't do this. I'm not a developer. I don't write code. But I said, I got to a point, Gene, and I'm not trying. I said, what part of the English language don't you understand? I don't do this. Okay, please stop. He sends me another message. I'm like, no. And at that point, I just went, boop, goodbye, see ya. But again, some people think, they're going to try to put one over on me, and that just does not happen. Because I have no problem telling somebody, this is not what we agreed to. And if you don't like
would it be wrong? The New York comes out in you?
Yeah. But, over the years, I've, when you deal with people across the world and in the corporate sector, you deal with people, New York has one attitude, California has another one, Nevada has been kind of laid back, and I'm getting used to like going for a walk and people waving hi to me, and I have no idea who they are. But yeah, when I get pushed like that, the New Yorker will come out of me, and I have my best friends. I have hurt somebody's feelings a few times because I'm like I will not stand for certain things, especially as a professional. Especially treat me with respect, because that's all. At the end of the day, that's how the relationship builds, is with mutual respect.
So respect is a word that you've used a number of times. So that's obviously a huge core value of yours and a tenant. So what is Neil's definition of respect, or let's say mutual respect in the business sense?
That I look at it this way when it comes to respect. If you have a question, please ask me. If I have a question, please give me the answer. Don't leave me guessing. I also think it's my pet peeve, and people know this has just been me since I was a teenager. The first guy I ever worked for, he said to me when I first met him, great guy, taught me a lot about business. He said, I ask of one thing, be on time. If you're going to be late, call me. If you're going to be early, I will always respect you. And then he goes, if you be early, call me so I can pick up coffee for everybody. Yeah, this guy Tom I worked for years ago taught me so much about business and respect for the job and respect for people. And I carry that with me about I'm habitually early. And if I set up, people, as I get to know people, I give people some leeway, but if I make, what'll drive me crazy is if I schedule a meeting and I'm sitting on Zoom for 15 minutes and I don't hear anything, I do get annoyed. I will not take it personally because life does happen. I had that happen to me last week, and my client was like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, it's okay. Life happens. I get it, but I've had times where clients have gone completely MIA to a point they've fallen off the grid. And I'm like, okay. I mean, do I get annoyed? Yeah. But on the other hand, you also got to, it's like the 4 agreement says you can't take stuff personally either.
This is the second time today somebody's referenced the 4 agreements. That's from 7 Habits, isn't it?
Well, there's the 4 agreements, the book. I probably think it's incorporated into 7 Habits, but I've learned, I know people that kind of like in the court, like they take stuff so personally. I'm like, dude, you can't walk around with a chip on your shoulder all the time. I said, it's going to eat you alive.
Oh, 100%, right? It's like, it's the old metaphor. It's like, you're going to drink the poison and then hope that they get sick. Be like, that's crazy talk. Be like, and life does happen. And it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a reflection of your self-worth or the value you bring. It's just a situation within it and somebody else's choices around it, right? You have an opportunity to constantly design that alliance with the people and your teams that you're working with. So I want to jump back a little bit to you. So I have a sinking suspicion I know the person who had the conversation about asking you what you really wanted to do.
You do. You do. It was just one of those. I was telling her what happened, and she says to me, "What do you want to do?" And it all kind of crystallized because one of my other friends had said to me, the one thing about dealing with corporate is I call them the guardians of the gate. It's dealing with these human resources people, and they always seem to be like, hiring manager likes you, but the HR person doesn't like you, so they're not going to hire you. But I just got to a point. I said, you know what? I was starting to understand how I started getting an inkling of my own self-worth and my own skill set. And in between, I had been working on really staying relevant. That's one of the things about digital right now is you've got to be a practitioner of your craft. You have to stay relevant to what's going on because otherwise it just blows by. And she said to me, I just, there was no hesitation. I'm like, I'm all in on me. I'm like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I'll find a way. I wanted to leave New York,
Powerful.
and
You found a
it
way.
happened. I put it out
Well,
there, and it happened.
there's a lot of power in when you start to say, like, you remove the ifs or the whens, or like, I'm making this happen. I just haven't accomplished. I'm working towards this, and it sounds like that's kind of that shift that you had in it. What was it like for you when you made that comment? Be like, I'm going to go all in on me.
I you know what it was is I had that interview, and I had spoken to somebody else, and like somebody said, how did it go? And I said, to be honest with you, I said, I don't like the fact when you prepare for a conversation and you're very interested in the organization, and the person you're talking to, who's probably the person you're going to work for, says, they had more enough ample time to prepare. He says, I'm reviewing, so I'm looking at your resume right now, and I'm going, to me, I was like, I can't work for an organization like this. This was like the big red flag. I said, it's a lack of respect on his part, and he's a vice president, and I'm applying for like the managerial role. Odds are I'd be reporting to him, and I'm like, you don't take this serious. You're looking to add a head count, and you're just not serious about it. I'm like, I can't work for somebody like that. But then I looked at, I just looked at it from a big picture, what was going to make me happy, and I said, I'm tired of chasing this. I just hit my breaking point. I'm done chasing. I know I can do this. It takes time. And I was, deployed a ton of patience also. And I said, okay, I'm all in on me.
Yeah. So we've got belief and deploying patience. The big secret to all of this is that belief and patience, and the actions behind it, right? Like, obviously, there was a moment of I'm going to have to assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably a bit of a relief and just like a aha moment.
Yeah, no, it was a big aha moment, because when you're chasing, it's like asking the hot girl out. You know what? I felt like I was chasing and chasing and chasing, and I said, I'm done with this. It was just getting to a point. It was a breaking point that I said, no, you know what? I I have enough experience and background. I can go and build this. It takes time. And again, going through the last few years of the process of peeling my own personal onion back of my own self-worth, my own, no, you're not smart enough to learn this, and pulling all those pieces, getting all those blocks out of the way, it just changed my entire perspective. And, you know, what also, I look at it from the entrepreneurial perspective of attracting clients. I tell myself every day, I attract aligned clients. But I also, in the last 4 weeks, they've come to me just based on my own online reputation. So I know what I've created now. I've created a presence where, like, you know what, we need to talk to Neil, because look at the other orgs he's been working for, and look what they say about him.
Yeah.
And that alone, I tell people that, watch your online reputation, because you don't want a bad review, because that could sink you quickly.
Right. So you're focusing on the relationships and getting those and bringing that value so that they're willing to say, hey, Neil's the guy. And I love that you're saying to yourself and thinking about every day, I'm attracting aligned clients.
Yeah.
Like when you're resetting and restating and coming from that mindset every day, well, then you're looking for it. You're not looking for unaligned. You're not looking for anything else. It's just like, here's who we're going after, and here's why I'm going to bring them great value. And once we'll have the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, you talked a little bit as well about like trying to figure out what your ideal client was. What was your process for figuring that out? And, like, did you have support? Did you have help on that? Like,
Yeah.
obviously that wasn't something that you're like, oh, I got it now. It's a bit of a process, but like,
it came down to, I'm trying to think which course Danielle did, and we had like a Zoom follow-up call, and I got kind of called out, and she said to me, you need to go to your whiteboard and go figure this out. I kind of had the framework, of
Yeah.
what my ideal client looks like. And once I put that on, put it out there on the board, it started to make more and more sense because, I mean, there were clients I didn't onboard, but again, what I keep finding is that in a lot of these larger organizations, there's a knowledge gap right now of, yeah, we need somebody who can tag, report, and analyze. Like they kind of don't have all the bandwidth they need. And also, what I keep hearing lately is from a lot of these companies is that outside voice and outside perspective shifts their own mindset. Because there's times I've talked to leaders and I'm like, well, I said, if you're focused on vanity, you're having zero clarity on where you want to go because you're telling me this is your intention, but you're not hitting it, but you're focused on this metric. And I'm going, this metric is not going to get you to your intention. And they're like, the aha moment starts to come and they're like, okay, Neil, tell us what we need to do. And it's surprising in this age of data. There are data scientists, don't get me wrong. But at its core, people just kind of get like hyper focused on certain things. And I'm like, this metric's not going to get you there. All right. This course of action will. This metric will have an impact later on, but you're focusing on the wrong piece of the wrong metric to the wrong piece of the business. Because the other thing, I've learned is, what's the business flow? What's it all about? I've had a couple of guys in the last few weeks who I didn't onboard. I looked at their business. One of them, I told them, can it be successful? Yeah, but this is a very long game. And I said, and there's things about this I don't understand yet that you would have to explain to me. But I said, you're not going to, I can't tell you that if we do all these components that it's going to grow as quickly as your expectations are. My other thing is I reset the expectations sometimes because people are like, I'm like, no, have you looked at this? And they're like, no. And I said, this is part of your problem. And I get energized by that because it's like, I find the opportunities. All right. I can look at data all day. I can tell you where the opportunities are. I'll give you a prime example. And somebody had said to me, I've done all these YouTube videos. I'm like, but I'm not getting any more leads. I said, okay. I said, well, let's look at it this way. Can you tell me how many people looked at these videos and watched them the entire length? No. That's your first problem. Like, what do you mean? Well, if you know how many of them played, that means the content resonated with them. Like, I reverse engineer it. But what was your call to action? Blank stare.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we go, okay, so we're going to tag it. We're going to start looking at your YouTube videos. We'll figure out which ones have the best engagement. All right. Then you can answer the question. I let the client answer the question. What was the call to action? It might not be the right one. Aha moment. It's the little details too that people, organizations, the entrepreneur doesn't think about sometimes.
What, Neil, are you saying that I should have like a dashboard understanding my metrics, especially for this show in itself? Well, we might need to talk is what I'm hearing.
Well, it's funny. People I meet along this path, it's like when people are friends, oh, I have a website. Do you have an analyst? have you at least looked at the data? Well, I don't have time. That's what I do.
It just so happens that Dr. Data can get in there and make a diagnosis, right? Like, as you're talking, like, it's almost when you were talking about like the YouTube and reverse engineering. Yeah, I tease you about being Dr. Data, but like, there's almost a house reference in there where it's just like, no one else can figure out what's going on. Great. I'll go look in all the dark corners no one else is looking at. And ta-da, here it is.
Yeah. And what's funny, and I had a client early on when I was in the low cost phase and I was on fiverr.com and I missed Tony D. Tony D was like, he got things going for me. And it was like, I never charged him a lot. And a couple of times he goes, everything's off. It's Tony. There's no such thing as an analytics emergency. Neil, brother, you got to help me. So as I've gotten better as a practitioner, some of his clients, what happened was somebody unintentionally puts an extra Google Analytics tracking script on the site. It blows everything up.
Yeah.
Tony, who did it? What do you mean? I sent him up, I get on I sent him an email, sent him a screen grab. There's an extra script on the site. Please tell me your agency didn't do it. No, client did it. Take the script out. And one of them, he paid me a premium. I had to kind of estimate this client's numbers. Once you back out the data, I wanted to kill him. I just like, Tony, this is a one-off project. I'm not doing this again. But it's those little things. Even I just had a client who, unfortunately, decided he didn't want to work with me anymore. And when I started with him and I built out his dashboards, and I said to him, "You have an extra tracking script on the site. What do you mean? Bounce rates are not that low, and your page views, and you could see the trend when it happened. I have to talk to the developer. It only took 10 days to fix."
Yeah.
But again, I said to, and kind of gave me a little bit of that. I'm like, I fixed your main problem because I said, if you want me to analyze your data, it's completely skewed from this time frame. Now it's fixed. I said, other guys, they don't look for that. They just do it and go.
Yeah, they just look at the base and
Yeah.
go in. And it ties back into like having the data and knowing what to do with it and understanding it. Like those are all different subcategories of like, great, you got it. And you might want to make sense of it. And you're like, well, this number is high and makes me feel good. Be like, well, is that vanity? Well, what does a vanity mean? Well, here's how we can get into that. Be like, does it actually move your end goals? And if yes, cool, track it, figure it out in your funnel. If not, toss it.
Yeah, no. I've started to hear this morning. I said, if you have vanity, if you're focused on the vanity, you don't have clarity. And too many people have come. I'm like, you need to stop. This is not going to get you to your end goal. And people are like, what? I said, I'm telling you, it's not. When you've spent over 10,000 hours doing this kind of stuff, it's almost instinctive. I can look at it and say, no, not happening.
Yeah, your spidey senses kick in. You're like, there's something here, and it's not good.
Yeah.
Or there's something great and that just hasn't been unveiled yet.
The funniest one was I did some work for a guy. I want to say it was in Africa, like in Tunisia. He decided he was setting up a Shopify store. He was going to sell Nike sneakers. And nothing was set up right. And I kind of said to him, look, I said, this is a generalization. Now, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Do you think people are really focused on $250 Nike high tops right now? Well, I said, I'm just being honest. And I said to him, there were things lacking. And he was like, well, I'll fix all that and get back to you. I'm like, I don't want to hurt his feelings, but can I be successful at this? And this is, lifetime experience. I'm like, I don't know. Not at $250 a pop.
Oh, there's definitely sneakerheads out there that.
No. There were sneakerheads, but I was just like, no, it's not going to work if everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, typically when you've heard about it, it's already at the end of the trend.
Oh yeah.
So what are you looking forward to now that you've got a really good sense of where you're at, what that value is, who you serve, and what are all your green flags? What are you excited about next as you grow your business?
So we are in this new era of thank you, Google. They have released what's known as Google Analytics 4. It is brand new. It is not tied to GA3 at all. I call it the shiny new toy that everybody wants. And what I made a decision, I purchased the course last week. There's a few real pros out there that one of them offered up a course. I've used his YouTube channel sometimes to research solutions. Fantastic. And the plan is to go through the course in great detail. I have a couple of ideas how to roll out the service, and it's going to be it's going to be exciting because there's more and more demand popping in right now.
Right.
So I'm really probably looking at first quarter of 2022 when that's how it's going to look right now. I don't know. I'm just getting through the course and I'm kind of mind blown of what they did. And it's a completely different mindset. It's a complete pattern disruption. What I'm learning about it is there are going to be people who like their reports in Google Analytics 3. They're not even let's call them not available in Google Analytics 4. But the intention is, okay, if I really liked it in 3, how do we get it to 4 that I'll still be comfortable? It might have a different look and feel, but it's still going to serve the same purpose at the end of the day. But 3 modules in, like let's call it 3 short modules into it, I already have 5 pages of notes. Nice. I'm just like, wow, that's one piece of it. The other one is I started it right when I turned everything back on, is leveraging the power of Google Search Console for companies that invest in SEO agencies and want to have a third set of eyes to start asking questions, just on the research I've done. That'll come out sometime in 2022 also. It's the guts are there. It's just that the amount of work I've brought in, I'm literally going all day. So it's kind of, I'll find a little blocks of time, especially with GA4, because that was a real financial investment. But I know that's going to be 100x next year, as far as I'm concerned, because everyone's like, I got to have it. I'm like, you don't want it right now. And actually, that was one of how I onboarded one client of mine. He's like, what about GA4? And I'm like, Anthony, you don't want it. I'm telling you right now, wait. And then I've mentioned to him, I said, I'll put it to you this way. For anybody who's interested out there, if you really want Google Analytics 4, it has to be done in parallel with Google Analytics 3. And then you make the decision when to leave 3, because you can't just bring the data over. It doesn't work. So that's something I learned the other day. I was like, okay. So you would literally be starting from ground zero in terms of, if you were an e-commerce site, you would need all your old data, even to do analysis. And then the new data, you'd have to, there's a way to kind of mesh things in. Purchases are purchases. But again, the flows are completely different.
Right. Sounds like a lot of fun and exciting to have 2 new product and productized services to offer in the new year.
Yeah, that's the one, especially GA4, just because the other thing I tell people, what I like to do is I listen to the chatter in the market of what companies are looking to do. And everybody wants the shiny new toy. The problem is you just can't flip the switch. I had a client who came back to me. I worked with him 2 years ago and out of the blue, and he's like, I switched to GA4. He didn't even implement it right. There was no way to recover his old data. I held his hand, got him aligned, built him out a suite, and said, you have to start here. That's all, and he was happy, because it was like, it's gone. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
Fresh starts can be good too sometimes.
Yes.
Well, Neil, you know how I said at the start, I was going to look up and see we were past the 40-minute mark? We're at 45 minutes almost, man. So I want to be respectful of your time. You've got a lot of client work to get back to. We don't want to hold you up. So where can people find you? Let's give it a quick shout out.
Okay, so you could find me. It's one word, zendigitalanalytics.com. Site's under construction. I'm actually trying to bucket some time to work on it this weekend. I have 2 testimonials finally going up. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter at @NH_Shapiro. I have there's the Facebook page for Zen Digital, but there's not enough hours in the day. But
hit them all,
and I say this to anybody who's interested. If you just want to have a conversation, by all means, I make the time. Just, if you got questions, hit me up. I'm more than happy to answer them.
Nice. Awesome, man. All right. And now I ask everybody the same question. I know you've seen the show a number of times, and I want to give you a shout out for being #1 fan. So I've got a time machine. We're going to hop in it. We're going to go back 10 years. You get to give yourself one piece of advice. What would it be?
Real easy is don't be afraid to get uncomfortable. When you get uncomfortable, things will change radically and you get out of that zone. And like for me, I'm not afraid to put something in front of me and not learn it now. I can
Nice.
literally learn anything. I won't be a surgeon, but when it comes to digital, you got to, it's just get uncomfortable and things will change.
Yeah. That is some powerful advice, Neil. Thank you so much for sharing it. And I hope everybody gets to take that away. So let's wrap up this episode 63 with Neil, Dr. Data, by finding one thing to get uncomfortable with every single day. And until next time, everybody, have a great day. I'm Gene, the Enjoyment Coach, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks, Gene.